Chapter 8, Muslim Kills Muslim, Arrested, Prison. The second election for Parliament drew closer. I had announced my candidacy, but had to wait for the time of formal enrollment before I could begin campaigning. I believe that the mullah's repressions had alarmed many exhausted Iranians, causing them to look for a way to save their country, which was on a path to unsustainable bankruptcy. I was disappointed and decided to stay away from the Islamic political philosophy this time. I was trying to align my desires with the nation's cultural wisdom and hoped to rise as an Iranian star along with other Iranian zealots and save the country from the mullah's tyranny. Little did I know that the mullahs did not believe in elections, and they only allowed an election to find out who their competitors were. Once they identified a rival, they did every vicious thing in their power to destroy them and those patriotic Iranians who genuinely loved their country and wanted freedom. The mullahs did everything they could to stop individuals from uniting people under the umbrella of their national culture. What mattered for them were the values of Islam. They not only showed hostility to the Iranian culture, but tried to destroy its power to unify the various communities of the nation. At this time, we started to dig into our country's history and unearth the politics of the ancient-day Arabian Islamists who dominated our country. The motto they spread around was that Islam was perfect and Islamism could give them everything. Because of this, the people desired to adopt the religion Islam. The truth was the Arabs invaded Iran, but found they could not rule over this developed nation easily. To dominate every aspect of Iranian life, they used a similar tactic to what our contemporary mullahs used before the revolution of 1979. They too had promised prosperity and a peaceful and respectful Islam, which later destroyed the peace of the nation and treated the Iranians as second-class citizens. Deep in our hearts, we were so sorry that we had not investigated the Islamists' political philosophy and were not wise enough to see the mullahs' deceits. We trusted their empty words and thought that their values would give us more than the kingdom of the Shah. Their post-revolutionary attitudes caused us to blame ourselves for opposing the Shah, under whose kingdom we had a measure of freedom and were able to call ourselves Iranians. Now, not only did we lose the hope of freedom under the mullah's dictatorship, we lost the hope to live. Freedom of speech became something imagined, which we could only long for under their suppression. Not only this, our families were living in horror. Any time we heard the bell on our gate ringing, we would think that it could be religious guards come to take us somewhere unknown. Our homely comforts were giving way to increasing fear and horror. Soon enough, it was my turn to be abducted and taken away. My wife and I and our 3-year-old daughter went to visit my in-laws in the city one night. A man with several guards went to my mother's house, saying that he had come from Rash, the capital city of our state Gilan, and wanted to discuss the upcoming election with me. Unable to speak Persian, my mother called my older brother to speak with the man. When my brother informed him where I was, he asked my brother to take him and his companions to me. My brother drove his own car and they followed him. When they reached the house, my brother was thanked and told that he could go. 2 of the men rang the bell and asked for me to go to the gate to speak with Dr. Khazai, who was the chief executive officer of the head office of the branch subsidiary organization, Building Jihad, which I led before. Out of respect, my brother-in-law asked them to come in and have a cup of tea with us. My brother-in-law came and told me 2 guards are at the gate saying that Dr. Khazai is parked in his car and wants to speak with you. Dr. Khazai and I respected each other, and he was aware of the mullah's hatred of me. I went to the gate and asked the guards, "Where is Dr. Khazai? My goodness, why is he not coming in?" One of them responded, "We are only accompanying him. He's in the car. He does not have much time. Would you please come to the car and have a short chat with him? We have to go as soon as possible." I went to the car, looked in, and saw the other 2 guards, but Dr. Khazai was not in the car. I immediately realized I had a problem. I said to the 2 young guards outside, "Dr. Khazai is not in the car." They said they were Khazai's friends and had come to convey a message. They wanted me to get into the car, but I refused. As I started to walk away, they brought out their guns from under their coats, put them to my head, and pushed me into the car. The thugs covered my head and face with a beanie, handcuffed me, and drove the car through various streets so that I was no longer able to determine our direction. Eventually, I found myself in a horrifying place, the prison of the Revolutionary Guard in my hometown. Unaware what the consequence of my complaint would be in a political prison, I complained to them and said, "Did you need to kidnap me at nighttime? I'm not a fugitive. I'm always in the city, in the streets, and shopping centers. You could have come to me any time you wanted. Why do you take pleasure in causing pain to my family? Why didn't you want them to know that you guards have brought me here?" Though I do not like to recall the horrifying moments in prison, these questions plagued me during that painful time. They were also significant after my escape from Iran and subsequent conversion to Christ in Turkey. I read Jesus' comments to the crowd, which was sent by Jewish priests and elders to arrest him. I became overcome with emotion as I recalled my own experience. I discovered that Jesus asked the same question of the multitude upon his arrest in the dark of night. Socially, politically, and emotionally, I was able to identify my pains with his pains and was ready to listen to his story. I know now that he allowed these things, though painful, so that one day they would draw my attention to him. Torture. I never imagined that a committed Muslim would torture and persecute a fellow Muslim with unimaginable cruelty. People had told me before, but I did not believe that the mullah's persecution and torture could be so severe until I experienced it personally. The things I saw were unthinkable in their brutality. No one, except those who have experienced the bitterness of political prison in the Islamic Republic of Iran, can possibly understand the treachery of such a prison. Years later in America, I met 3 Iranians in a restaurant randomly. During our conversation, they learned in which prison I had been incarcerated. One of them, whose husband had been in the same prison, began to weep. She told us what had happened to her husband. Many prisoners desire to die as soon as possible in order to be freed from that persecution, but instead are humiliated and terrorized time and time again. One prisoner used his pajamas to hang himself from the iron frame of a little window in his cell, but the material was so old it was not strong enough to hold his weight and suffocate him. The man wept, wanting to release himself from unbearable pain, and cursed his pajamas. On the night that I was kidnapped, I was wearing my pajamas. One of my captors was beating my face and saying, "You wanted to rescue a nation from mullahs, but now rescue yourself and let us see it." While mocking me, they were pulling at my pajamas and asking me, "Who's going to sleep with your wife tonight?" Another said, "Who can sleep with her, as he's going to die? She is yours or mine. He will not be around anymore. He's going to die." For 3 days, I endured emotional and physical shock and pain. Emotional because it was unbelievable to hear and see such immoral words and attitudes from the Muslims who had introduced themselves to people as righteous and compassionate. In the hours when I was being tortured, I was taken to a cell that was really a hole in the ground used as a toilet. The first month in the prison is vital to the persecutors, forcing prisoners to confess the things they want to hear. Whenever they wanted to get rid of someone, they forced other prisoners to falsely testify against him. One day, a young man and I were taken to the torture room. He was slashed with a cable to make him falsely testify that I financially supported Mojahedin-ul-Khalq, a faction which opposed the Islamic Republic of Iran. 3 times they slashed him to the point of fainting, but each time he refused to lie against me. They became so angry and started to cut one of his ears off. Unable to bear the pain, the young man finally testified against me. His torturers left his ear on. Judged. After 2 months, my wife learned my whereabouts. The revolutionary judge in our area, who was also a mullah, lied to her. He told her I had killed innocent people and must face justice. She was told to forget me and that I had not been a faithful Muslim husband for her. They encouraged her to express her anger toward my deceit when she was allowed to see me. "Very soon we will bring him to a television show, and you will hear from his own mouth what horrifying things he has done," the judge told her. He also said to her, "We will look after you if you like." What the judge really meant was, divorce him and be mine, or one among those who follow the Ayatollah Khomeini. My wife, discouraged, received permission to visit me. Through tears she asked me, "Why did you hide all the terrible things you've done?" She repeated to me the things she had heard from the judge. The mullahs were poisoning the minds of my wife and our community. I told her, "They are lying. They're trying to discourage you, separate you from me, and torture me emotionally. They're also trying to get rid of me. That's why they're trying to confuse my family and the community with their lies. I have not killed anyone. I am not a killer. It is they who are the killers. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm here only because of my opposition to them. Please let everyone know this as much as you can." My words gave my wife courage, and she spread my message throughout the community. I was taken to court for the first hearing. The court for political opposition is called the Revolutionary Court. Judgment of political prisoners takes place in a closed room with only a few religious guards, the judge, and the prisoner present. My judge was an ignorant mullah who not only did not deserve the position, but also did not know how to judge. Injustice is at the root of every Islamic revolutionary judge. The revolutionary judges are placed in such a position not because of their capabilities, but because of their allegiance to top leaders. According to the Islamic Republic of Iran, they should not be merciful towards opponents. They are only to inflict pain on anyone who criticizes the system. It was embarrassing and painful for me to be judged by such a man. Why don't you join the Friday prayer like many other prisoners do? The judge's first question was meant to stump me, but I was not afraid to respond boldly, as I realized him to be unaware of Islamic teachings concerning this. As I understand, sir, if you do not trust an imam, you do not stand imitating him in prayer. I do not trust the Friday imam, and I do not believe that Allah will ignore my prayers in prison, I responded. It is custom in Islam that on Fridays many committed Muslims go to the mosque and pray under the leadership of a Friday imam, a mullah who is called Imam Juma. In order to fulfill their religious duties or to gain the favor of the Revolutionary Guards, some prisoners enlisted to join the Friday prayer in our town. They were taken to a mosque under a tight security program and placed in the prisoner's spot for prayer. I did not join the Friday prayers. To my astonishment, the guards had reported this to the judge. This is a very personal decision. Judges do not discuss this in court. It damages their own prestige if they include such a personal issue in a court case. My judge included it because he was not a real judge. He was a persecutor. However, after he heard my bold response, he looked unhappy and said to me, "I do not believe that your only problem is the Friday imam. You do not accept any of us. Do you believe that we represent justice?" I responded, "You cannot represent justice, sir." I continued, "Have you ever studied justice? Justice says, do not lie, but you lied to my wife. Justice does not oppress the innocents, but you are keeping an innocent man in your prison simply because he does not agree with everything you do. How can I call you a just judge, sir? It seems to me that you are certain you are going to die. Therefore, you feel free to say whatever you like," said the judge. I replied, "Yes, sir, I am ready to die. You are in the prison of your own world and will not be able to listen to me. I have to say what I believe. You want me to keep quiet, but I cannot. I am the leader of thousands. How can I betray them? And you really don't need to ask questions of your prisoners to determine whether or not you are an agent of death. Since you were appointed to this position, many people have come to realize that communities have been put under the shadow of death. People are not dumb. These people have a history of many dictators, none of whom were able to survive. One of the guards asked permission to beat me, but the judge waved him off, saying, "He is already dead to me, son. He's just breathing his last moments. You won't have to beat him again. Your torturing brothers at the prison will find a solution for his tongue." Back to university. The judge turned to the guards. "Take him to the university." The guards blindfolded me and took me to their university of pain and torture. The mullahs have no respect for universities, but education is revered by Iranians. Education is a legacy their forefathers left for them. Centuries ago, people from many nations came to study in the former Persia. Sadly, the more the Arabian nomadic and Islamic culture captured the minds of Iranians, the more they backslid in education. However, the Ayatollah Khomeini called his prisons universities in jest, knowing they would be used to rape and torture women and men who opposed them, and these would teach lessons to many Iranians to avoid rejecting his regime. Young opposition boys were and continue to be slaughtered or forcibly addicted to drugs so they would lose strength and be unable to fight the mullahs. The previous prisoners, who were kept in the same toilet where I was, wrote on the wall, "This toilet is called a university by the Ayatollah Khomeini in the Islamic Republic of Iran. This is a place that made our children orphans or made our parents and families mourn forever. We were not able to see one good thing and learn one good lesson in this university. Oh, Iran, what turned your universities into toilets and prisons? Isn't it because you were closing your eyes to the unjust mullahs? There's a vast difference between this university and universities where students are taught to be a blessing to their nation and uphold freedom." The news of my fearless response to the judge was spread throughout the city. The source was the angry guards who relayed my fearless insolence toward the judge. Some admired my courage. The news reached my wife, who knew the penalty for such opposition. She began to lose hope for my release. A 3-year-old visitor. My little daughter missed me and cried for me to come home. My wife went to the judge and asked him to allow a visit for my daughter. She asked for the meeting to be in a court office instead of the horrifying environment of the prison. I miss my daughter very much. but did not want the environment of the prison to be etched in her mind forever. Also, I did not want my captors to see any emotional weakness, which is power for me, on my part. If she visited, I would show love and cry to my daughter. They would use my parental love to cause me more suffering. One of the tactics they used was to bring a prisoner's children in and threaten to harm them in order to break the prisoner's spirits. After many requests, my wife was granted permission to bring my daughter for a visit in the court building. I was blindfolded and handcuffed for the drive. The driver, to my surprise, treated me with respect and took the blindfold from my eyes, but left me cuffed. Inside the court gate, I raised my head and saw my daughter playing on the steps of the court building. With a heart-melting sigh, unique to my culture, I raised my voice saying, "Oh, may I die for you, my darling." Impulsively, I opened the door while the car was still running. For a moment, I forgot that I was a prisoner and needed permission to exit the car. All I could think of was to throw my arms around my daughter. When I opened the door, the driver braked suddenly to prevent an accident. I was crying, apologizing. My uncontrollable behavior to see my child impacted the guard to the point of tears. Quietly, he said, "It's okay, you can get out." I ran toward my daughter, and when she saw me, she cried and I cried. She asked me, "Where were you? Why didn't you take me with you?" We went into the building, where precious time passed quickly. The moment of separation was hard. Would we see each other again? I tried to comfort my daughter, telling her how much I loved her and making a promise to see her again. Promise I wasn't sure I could keep. That moment was more painful to me than when I had been kidnapped. Before, I was unsure what would happen to me. Now, I sensed the smell of death. New living quarters. The day after my visit, I was called from my cell and told to make myself ready. Ready for what? To be taken somewhere else? To go home? Or to die? The uncertainty was like a death sentence. Despite expecting the savage mullahs to do every evil thing, I was still crying in my heart to the supernatural one to release me from their further horrific plans, persecutions, and prisons. Later, a religious guard came and gave me a blindfold to cover my eyes. He took my hand, led me through a door, and took the blindfold off, and I found myself in a room with 6 prisoners. A few of us recognized one another, but even those I was not familiar with recognized me for my campaign as a political candidate. As soon as they saw me, they stood up in respect. Those closest to me rushed forward and hugged me, crying. We had an hour, a time of emotion and laughter. I asked them how long they had been there. A few were brought that same day, others had been there longer. "Do you know why we are in this room?" I asked them. They were not sure. A few hoped for release. "Sometimes prisoners are brought to a bigger room first," said one of my fellow inmates, "and after the marks of torture disappear from their bodies, they are released. They do not show such a favor to political prisoners unless their prison term comes to an end. To be in a bigger prison room with a few others was a big thing." The room definitely was not the little toilet where I was kept for 3 months. We each had a blanket, though we slept on the concrete floor, and we had each other's companionship. Little did we know that the arrangement was a trap. We were together for a month, but soon discovered that one of the prisoners was a guard sent to spy on us. 2 of the prisoners were taken out and severely slashed by a cable 80 times. They were unable to walk for weeks. We cared for them and needed to take them to the restroom. Our spy disappeared. Sometimes a few religious guards came into the cell and showed some respect toward me. Possibly they were not sure if I would be released. If released, I would still be a leader of thousands. Moreover, if I was released and I became a leader in the future, I wouldn't be able to ignore their hostility. I believe that some genuinely respected me. They knew that I was innocent and a leader of the people. A few of them brought me food and expressed their sadness with tears. One day the head of the guards came with a smile, telling me to prepare myself for departure the following day. The man had been one of my followers, but after I fell out of favor with the mullahs and lost power, he joined the mullahs' party, eventually becoming the head of persecutors in this political prison. I was apprehensive about his smile. The other prisoners were absolutely certain I would be released and go home. Their confidence gave me confidence too. Each of them gave me messages to take to their families. "Enjoy your life," they said. "Remember us when you see the beautiful mountains. Comfort our families with your words if you're able to visit them." In response, I said to them, "I will never forget you. I will help your families. I will also try my best to find a way and send food to you." Sentenced. On the day of my departure, we exchanged emotional goodbyes. A mixture of happiness, sadness, and fear gripped me. The chief guard led me out without my eyes covered. Because he did not ask me to cover my eyes, I felt more confident that I would be going home. He took me to his room and said that the Supreme Judge of the state had issued a death sentence for me. I would be moved to another prison in a different state to await my execution. The words hit me hard and my eyes went blur for a moment. Unable to stand on my feet, I leaned against the wall and slid to the floor. I said to the chief, in a barely audible voice, "I am sorry for sitting." He helped me to a chair and called the guards. I was taken to the back of a truck made for carrying prisoners. One of the higher-ranking guards handcuffed and blindfolded me. We drove for a few minutes and the truck stopped. The driver came to the back and asked the guard who had a gun in his hand to release my handcuffs and take the blindfold off my eyes. The guard obliged the driver. "Thank you very much," I said. "Forgive us for our cruelty," said the driver in response to my surprise. He jumped back into the truck and drove off. My guard looked sad. Both men were younger than I. I was 29. The car headed south of my hometown down a road where I had walked for 12 years between our house and school, the road I had driven for many years before my political problem in prison. I felt powerless. Tears were frozen in my eyes. I was unable to cry. I wanted to see my family just for a moment and then die. Like a man who has allowed his last request, I asked the guard for a favor. Would you be able to take me to see my family for a few minutes to say goodbye and leave my clothes at home? They're just a few minutes from here. He was speechless for a moment. His eyes looked at me so meaningfully. He slowly lifted his head first, brought it down, and closed his eyes. A heavy sigh emerged from his lungs, and he said, I wish I was not here and did not have this uniform on." Then I saw him crying. Tears were streaming down his face. I stared at him in amazement. With a compassionate voice, he said, "It is your right to see your family and to be with them. More than anybody else, I believe you deserve it. This is not the right moment. What will happen when your family learns that you're going to die? Won't they mourn and raise their voices and draw the attention of all neighbors? If the mullahs hear this, won't they kill us and you on the spot? Won't they give your family a hard time?" His argument sounded very wise, and I felt embarrassed for such a request. "You're right, brother," I agreed. "I lost control of myself," I said. Astonished, he said, "Are you calling us your brother? We do not deserve to be called your brothers. Brothers solve their problems with each other through words, not through guns. We based everything in our lives on guns, which are ultimately going to kill us too." His words and company lifted me a bit, and I was able to think. I felt proud of him and thanked him, saying, "You have eased my pain." I was taken to a revolutionary garrison that also had a prison for those who opposed the mullahs. It was in Rasht, the capital city of our own state, Gilan. It was evening, and I was kept there for about an hour. Then a couple of guards came. Once more, I was blindfolded and my hands were chained. I was put in the front seat of another car. Someone else was sitting beside me in the front seat in addition to the driver. I didn't know who were in the back seats of the car, but from time to time someone coughed from behind me. Immediately I assumed that the rear seats were full. Apprehension and uncertainty overwhelmed me. The car was hot and the driver was reckless. I felt sick. I told the driver, "I don't want to create an uncomfortable situation in the car. Could you stop, please, so that I can get out and have a bit of fresh air?" The driver did not believe me. He asked, "Are you really feeling sick or are you planning to escape?" However, he did stop, giving me a respite before resuming the drive. Around midnight, we reached another prison in Chalus, a city in the state of Mazandaran. My captors released me to another team of jailers. I was taken to a room where 4 other prisoners were being held. 2 of them had been with me only a couple of days before and asked me to visit their families when I was released. The third man was the one whose ear was almost cut off because of me. When he saw me, he came forward, cried, and apologized to me. He said that while he was being judged, he wrote a letter falsifying his testimony against me and gave it to the revolutionary judge. The 4th person in the room was my dear friend, whom I loved but had not seen for years. I had heard that he had been killed in a clash with the mullahs' forces, but that was not certain. For years, he had hidden himself from the mullahs. He was a militia member of the Mojahedin Khalq of Iran and fought for the Mojahedin until he was eventually caught. Our friendship was not because of politics. His family lived in a village a few kilometers from us towards the Caspian Sea. We attended the same school. While I was a senior high school student, he was in middle school. We saw each other every day. When I was in university, and he still in high school, he learned of my financial distress and went to work in a low-paying job in order to help me. I was humbled and grateful, but expressed my concern in a thank you note that the extra work could interfere with his studies. In response, he wrote, "In our town, everyone is speaking about your courage and the hardship you went through to remain in school. I have 2 reasons to support you. First, if you fail, I will fail too, because many fathers, including my father, will be disappointed and eventually will put pressure on their sons to stop their education. Second, I see you as my older brother. I will work in order to help you. When you finish your education and get a job, then you can help me to go through university. For this reason, I loved him for his thoughtfulness and caring heart. He was a great thinker. He was my friend and like my little brother, and now I saw that he was going to die with me. We embraced and quietly cried. Had they known we were friends, the guards of this prison would not have put us together for fear of conspiracy against them. It was hard for me to see my friend carrying a death sentence on his shoulders. I was supposed to get a job and help him finish university. But now, the only job remaining for both of us was death, to take our desires with us to the tomb and leave the ongoing dictatorship of Iran to live longer. The thought of his death reduced the pressure of my death sentence on me. This is the culture of brotherhood in Iran. The pain of the death sentence of the older brother is swallowed up in the pain of his younger brother. I hope to be taken to the death square ahead of him to spare me the pain of seeing him die. In the meantime, we were waiting to be separated from each other, so we talked for as long as we could. The following day, I was taken to another room where 4 other political prisoners also awaited execution in death row. The rooms had no windows, but there was a small hole in the wall near the ceiling. I could distinguish the sound of the prisoners' slippers from the solid walk of the guards. For 2 months, no one was taken from our room to the death chamber. Twice, guards came to videotape confessions of favor toward the mullahs. My cellmates relented and confessed, but I refused. They rationalized, saying, if you speak evil about yourselves and nice about the ruling mullahs, they might reduce your death sentence to life imprisonment. They convinced nearly all prisoners to comply, but those who had death sentences were still killed. Another visitor. One day, a guard came to our room telling me to get ready because a high-ranking member of the Revolutionary Guard was coming to speak with me. Confused, I asked, do you mean to take the prison pajamas off and put my normal clothes on? No, he said. When he comes, you need to stand and do not interrupt him. Then he left. None of us understood why someone of position was coming to see me. I thought it might be another one of their tricks. I was afraid and nervous. Sometimes I wished to die soon and be released from the emotional torture of wondering when it would happen. But what could we do? Nothing. After an hour or so, a tall young man in guard's uniform came in. We all stood up. He ordered us to sit and be comfortable. Who is Mr. Shayesteh? He asked. That's me, sir, I responded. How are you? He asked. I am waiting on death row, sir, and it is not a good feeling at all, I said. What do you think about Ayatollah Bani Sadr and where he is now? The man asked. Dr. Bani Sadr, the first Islamic president after the revolution, was now in exile, and we were political colleagues. In response to his question, I said, I feel good about him. I know that he is an intellectual man and wants to serve his countrymen. The only thing that I do not like about him is that he was not brave enough to stay in his country. Do you know that he is Gorbzadeh, or someone who loves Western values at the cost of his own? He questioned. No, I answered. I do not know this. He said, yes, he is. We have tried to kill him many times, but because he is protected by the French police, we have been unsuccessful. I said nothing. This is the attitude of committed Muslims. They call a person Gorbzadeh if he or she shows favor even to one value of the West. After a pause, he said to me, anyway, I've come here from Tehran to take you to your home today. Take your clothes and be ready to follow me. For a revolutionary Muslim guard, the home of political opposition was hell. So, to me, his words meant that I was going to be killed that day. I gathered my clothes and, looking at the other 4 prisoners, said, Khoda Hafez, which means, may God protect you, or goodbye in English. The guard did not ask me to cover my eyes. He opened the door, went out, and I followed him. He took me to a room, told me to sit, and asked, what bothered you most these past months in prison? It was most painful to think that I would die unjustly, I said. He then phoned the revolutionary judge in our town and spoke to him harshly, accusing him of being cruel to me. So many mind games had been played. I assumed this was another. I learned not to believe anything the guard said. I was right. After this phone conversation, he ordered me to a small cell with no light, saying I would have to wait a few hours before going home. I said to myself, if he wants to take me to my family home, why didn't he just let me wait in that office instead of this horrible cell? After a few hours, another guard came and told me to take off the prison pajamas, put on my own clothes, and follow him. He took me back to the same high-ranking guard. He said, We are going to send you to the prison you have come from. Then we will release you from there. I said, if you really want to release me, why are you handing me over to those who destroyed my life when you have authority to release me from here? He said, look, we need to help you legally. We know what we are doing. You do not need to worry about this. Go, and God bless you. He ordered the guard who took me from the last cell to take me to my hometown. Within a few hours, I was back in my hometown. On the way back home, I kept thinking, maybe the Revolutionary Guards are trying to manipulate me as they have done to other political prisoners. Maybe they have realized that many people believe in my innocence and have decided to release me so they can kill me in secret and even mourn with people over my dead body, thinking it would persuade others to believe they had not killed me. My mind raced, scenarios playing like a movie. A death like this was far more terrifying to me than death in prison because it could happen in front of my family and would terrify them. We had seen and heard horrible things from the mullahs in Iran. They are experts in inflicting pain to their opposition, and it is a religious joy for them to torture their opposition as much as they can. The driver took me to the prison and handed me over to the same chief who informed me of my death sentence. He opened my documents, looked for a moment, and then said, "You were back again?" He called one of his guards and asked him to take me to a room. It was the guard who was sitting with me on the back of the truck on the way to the second prison, the same guard who wept over my death sentence. He was astonished that I was back. Outside the chief's office, he whispered, "Oh my God, you are back. What is happening, Brother Shayesteh?" "I am not really sure what is going to happen," I responded very quietly. I told him what had taken place and how I came to return to this prison. His face was full of excitement. He opened the door to a bigger room where 13 prisoners sat, mostly young teenagers who were members of the Mujahideen al-Khalq. They rushed forward and said, "Mr. Shayesteh, why did they catch you again? And what is this color on your face?" They did not know that I was not released, but instead being taken to another prison. I explained how I'd been brought back and then asked, what is wrong with my face? I had not seen my face for months because we did not have a mirror. They said it looked as though I had lost much weight and my face was yellowish. I explained that in Shayesteh I was in a room with little light. This and the fear of death, I suppose, had drained my face of blood. I was warned to be careful of what I said in the room. There would be spies disguised as prisoners. The area judge and the prison chief were not happy at all that I was back, and they would do every kind of evil in order to trap me again. I learned that a very young prisoner who treated me with respect was a spy. Apparently he showed more respect towards me than the other prisoners, trying to convince me that he was trustworthy. He was convincing as a prisoner, describing how severely he was persecuted and tortured because of his pro-democracy stand. Once he cried and said to me, "What do we need to do? Do we keep quiet and die in prison? Don't we need to send this message to people outside and ask them to do something?" Trying to avoid answering his questions, I replied, "I need to listen to you more and hear the words of your heart." In the meantime, I warned the other prisoners that they were to listen to him but not to answer his questions. I suspected that he may have a recording device. I wanted other witnesses against him in case I faced another trial. One day, the chief guard came into the room with a few other guards to check the room. This boy asked him whether or not he would be permitted to use the restroom. The chief guard allowed him, and one of the guards took him to the restroom. After he was brought back, he immediately came and sat beside me. I was sitting in a corner alone. He said, "We need to do something. You're a great leader. Why are you keeping quiet? We need your guidance against this cruel government." I responded, "Do you really respect and accept my leadership?" "Of course I do," he said. "I am ready to die for you." I slapped his face hard, calling him a liar. He rushed to the door, crying for help. "I've been attacked." A guard opened the door immediately, and he rushed out, saying that he wanted to see the chief guard. The chief guard entered the room moments later with more guards. He asked if I had beaten the boy with the intent to kill him. I said, "I did not want to kill him. I just wanted to slap him." "You know that this will cost you a lot," he said. "I knew that it would cost me," I said. "But I did this in order to prevent the huge burden he's been trying to load on our shoulders." Time and time again, he encouraged prisoners to plan riots and send messages to the people outside to encourage them to riot against the government. We listened to him each time and did not respond, but today his deception increased, trying to provoke a response by saying he was ready to die if I told him to die. I hit him for 2 reasons. First, we will not get involved in his plan to riot against the government. Second, I just wanted to test him in order to see whether he was really honest in saying that he valued me as a leader and was ready to die for me. Every prisoner here knows that he has consistently lied to us. When I finished, the other prisoners confirmed what I had said and asked for the removal of the traitor. Then the chief guard took me out by the door to talk to me privately. He said, You ought not to beat a prisoner, no matter what he does. You have to call a guard and report to him. I know that I have acted illegally, I said. I am ready to pay the cost, and I believe my cost is far less than the cost he aims to cause for the country. All the prisoners know that he is a betrayer of our country, and he must face justice. The chief realized that he and his spies had not outwitted the prisoners. He left the room, and we never saw the young man again. I wondered, what is happening to me? I was told in Shayesteh that I was going home, but I'm still locked up. My temporary release paper was ready, but still unsigned. The revolutionary judge of the area did not want me to be released, but eventually a new judge was appointed and signed the paper, and I was released temporarily. I was told my documents and death sentence were being reviewed. I had to appear in the revolutionary court the first day, Saturday, in Iran, of each week to show that I was in the city. I could go nowhere without the court's permission. I even doubted the review as being real or just another scheme. Though it was good to be with my family, the fear that at any moment I could be secretly slaughtered by unknown invaders in the night was terrifying. Family members and many friends were so excited at having me back home from such an ordeal. For days, people from many areas came to visit me and express their happiness and goodwill. However, to some of my closest friends, family members, and my wife, I bluntly told them that this could be a scheme. They were greatly discouraged. I told them that the nature of my release seemed to me strange, and it might result in my death in a very mysterious way. I cautioned them to avoid speaking about this in public. The knowledge of my impending death was ever present without verbalizing it, but fear and concern were written on the faces of those who knew this. Our daughter was growing up and starting to understand things better. "You should not leave me and my mother alone anymore and go again for such a long trip," she would tell me. With sighs, I would respond, "Oh, my beautiful daughter, I'm sorry to leave you alone. I do not want to have a journey like that anymore, and I am asking God to keep me near to you always so that together we can destroy loneliness." I could see the uncertainty in my little child in the first weeks after my release while she was playing with her toys or friends. She was so uncomfortable any time I wished to go out. She wanted to make sure that I was not going to break my promise to her. The fear and anxiety in my family caused me to wish many times that I was not a Muslim and had not gotten involved in the revolution and politics so that my family would not have had to bear such pain. But it was too late. The peaceful life was like a hallucination. The more I got caught up in my thoughts, the more I lost hope for my life. Mind-bothering uncertainties and fear were pushing me into the depths of despair. Fear in the Islamic Republic of Iran was multidimensional and a source of torment in every aspect of our lives. Fear of joblessness, hunger, humiliation, limitless invasions, etc. My wife had been working in the mayor's office. She lost her job. The mayor was extremely pro-mullah and hated me. My wife's fear of the mullahs increased when she lost her job because she was my wife. Many family members lost their jobs because their relatives opposed the mullahs. Inflicting hardship and suffering on family members was a tactic the mullahs used to coerce betrayal. If the mullahs made life unbearable for their opposition's families because of fear, the families would turn over their children, brothers, sisters, fathers, or mothers to be killed by the butchers working for the mullahs.